Well, California is joining 4 other states in allowing the composting of human bodies, or as they call it, natural organic reduction of bodies, in the interest of protecting the planet from so-called climate change. Now, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, signed AB 351 into law on September 18th. It will go into effect on January 1st, 2027. And I want to talk more about this with National Center for Public Policy Research Senior Fellow, Dr. Bonner Cohen. Dr. Cohen, thank you so much for being here. So it looks like they're trying to normalize the use of humans to be processed for energy. I mean, despite this being way out there, maybe unrealistic even. I mean, when we use coal, we get a fixed amount of energy. What is this?
Well, this is a subject perhaps more suitable to Halloween than Christmas, but is something that is really bizarre. One of the more difficult things human beings have to deal with is the death of a loved one. This entails a lot of decisions that have to be made in a relatively quick period of time. We've all had to do this, and indeed our day will sometime come too. However, the climate lobby is now proposing and indeed enacting legislation in several states in the U.S. California's one, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and Vermont are others, where we are now allowed to have human composting. They actually call this recomposting. And in this, the human body, upon death, will be placed in a contained vessel. Alfalfa, wood chips, and straw will be added. And after 30 days, that will have sped up decomposition so that the human body can then be used as a form of fertilizer or topsoil. And this, we are told with a straight face, is going to reduce the carbon content of the air. The assemblywoman in California who introduced the bill claimed that if everyone in California who would otherwise be cremated were instead subjected to NOR, that would be enough carbon saved to heat 225,000 homes over a decade. And this just shows you what the whole climate debate has actually become. Death has now been enlisted in the policies that we are told, again with a straight face, will reverse what we are told is catastrophic climate change. And what it really does is, I think, reveal the lengths to which these people are prepared to go to impose their agenda on the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, this is really bizarre, and you mentioned it, this is all in the name of climate change, not to mention that the loss of a loved one is always painful. So climate warriors trying to politicize how we dispose of our loved ones, is this where this is going?
Oh, this is exactly not only where it's going, sadly, where in some cases it already is. And you just ask yourself, well, what's next? Another question you should ask yourself is, what effect will this have on the climate? And the answer is very simple. Absolutely zero.
Wow, so there's no science behind this? There's no science behind this?
There's absolutely no science behind this whatsoever. And for that matter, there's practically no science whatsoever behind the claim that higher levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will lead to a warming of the planet. As a matter of fact, the higher levels of carbon dioxide that we are experiencing now have actually been greatly beneficial because it has greatly improved agricultural productivity. The planet is greening. It is much greener now than it was at the end of the Little Ice Age about 300 years ago. So it's frankly something we should welcome, and we should not allow the death to be enlisted into the climate agenda as yet another means to solve a problem that demonstrably doesn't exist.
Yeah, Dr. Cohen, would you say this completely degrades the cycle of life and death?
Oh, yes, exactly. And I think it shows in many respects that the environmental movement is, in its own way, a cult of death. Um, It actually evolved from eugenics, the notion that there are too many people on the planet and that measures must be taken to limit the number of people on the planet. And as you can well imagine, that's a very slippery slope, one that led to some horrible atrocities that were carried out in the 20th century by people who developed their own version of eugenics. Eugenics as a concept, which was once very fashionable, Woodrow Wilson, Teddy Roosevelt, for example, were open supporters of eugenics. Well, after the Third Reich, which made eugenics the central organizing principle of what Hitler was up to, the term fell out of favor, but not the idea. And now we see, both in efforts to limit the population of the earth, and now it has reached the point where we are also enlisting the dead in the effort to combat climate change. And you're quite right. This does degrade the whole cycle of life and death through which we will all go.
Never thought of it that way. A cult of death. That's interesting. Dr. Bonner Cohen of the National Center for Public Policy Research, as always, thank you for being here with us.
I'm delighted to be here, even with this bizarre subject.
I know. Thank you so much. It's crazy. Still to come on one.